Hello everyone, I am here today to do an updated flip through of All About Learning's reading program, All About Reading Level 1. This is a foundational reading program. That means this is to teach your child how to read. So we are going to jump right in. Hey folks, I am Sarah from Homespun Childhood. I'm a former teacher turned homeschool mom, literacy specialist, literacy consultant, and here at Homespun Childhood, I share all things curriculum, reading, planning, homeschool life, and more. So we are going to do a in-depth look inside All About Reading's reading program. Now, for those of you who are new here, I love reading programs. I love teaching reading. I have a lot of thoughts about teaching reading, and I want to do a caveat that there is no one best fit program for any child. There are things that we need to look for in a reading program. We need it to be systematic and explicit. We need to have it follow what we know about how children learn how to read. If you are interested in learning more about kind of those details, check out the information in my caption below. I do have several blog posts on structured literacy, research-based instruction. I also have a new guide that is all about foundational reading instruction and like how to teach your child to read based off of my professional and personal experience. That guide includes lots of videos on how to teach reading, but also all the instructional strategies that you can apply to every reading program out there, including All About Reading or other reading programs if this one doesn't fit your needs. So, putting that aside, let's look through level 1. Before I get all this stuff out of here, let's just talk real quick about the components that come with the program, and then we'll go through them step by step. So you get your instructor manual, you get your activity book that you need to pull out like all these pages. We'll talk about prep work in a minute. You have 3 readers in level 1. We also have letter tiles, and I'll show you how I use these. You can use them without putting them on magnets, but I put them on magnets and use a magnetic whiteboard. I'll show you my system for that. I also highly recommend doing the reading review box. You don't have to do this. You can just use an index card or recipe bin holder. It has all your word cards in it. These little foam things are because without them, your words fall over, and this helps them keep them nice and upright. And as you extend into upper levels, you can remove a foam thing because you have more words. So that is that. So let's look at all the different pieces. All right, we are going to start with the teacher guide here. When we jump in, we have our table of contents, and it's divided into several sections. We have our preparing for level 1. This gives you, as the parent and teacher, the information you need to successfully teach this program. Then we have our step-by-step lesson plans, and then we have our appendices. We also want reading programs to be explicit, and that means they're going to teach us literally, explicitly, what the letters say, what sounds they make, how to blend the words, all that jazz. And so this program has that in it. One of the things you'll notice about All About Reading that might be different from other programs is the lessons have the readers itself, like the reading of the little book, is a separate lesson. And some programs will have like one lesson that teaches a particular phonogram or group of phonograms, and then reading a book will be part of that lesson. All About Reading breaks them up a little bit. And so you need to know that each lesson is not necessarily one day or one week. It really depends on your child. And I'll talk more about kind of my experience and opinion on that in a minute. Then we have preparing for lesson 1. Okay, so we have Let Us Show You. They do have nice video breakdowns of this. So if visual and video learning style is your thing, which since you're here on YouTube, I'm guessing it might be, I do recommend this. It's great. They do a nice job with it. We have our What Do You Need? This is the set of materials that you need to go with it. You do need the student packet. The student packet includes your activity book, which also has your fluency sheets in it. And it includes your phonogram cards, your word cards. There is a little viewfinder bookmark that has run off in my house, but it's like little like index card with a word spot cut out, so like you can slide it over and just read one word at a time, which is really helpful for some beginning readers. And it includes your sticker chart, which, you know, take it or leave it. I did not think my daughter would be into the sticker chart, and she very much was. So you never know. Anywho, then we have our interactive kit. You do not need the bag. That's your jam, go for it. But I don't use the bag. I don't have the bag. I do highly recommend letter tiles. If you don't use theirs, use something else. But I generally speaking recommend using the type of letter tiles that comes with the program you're using. So if you're switching programs, go ahead and use the ones you already have. But if you are starting fresh with this program, I would purchase their letter tiles. You can also use an app. They have a letter tile app. We use that for spelling because my daughter despises moving letter tiles around, but I do think physically moving them is good because it is multisensory, because you're having to like touch it and move it, and that helps the learning stick better. Anyways, we have the reading review box. I showed you that. You don't have to have the box, but I do like the box, and you don't have to have the tote. This level comes with 3 readers. They are hardback readers like I was just showing you. They are like little anthologies. So each book has a series of stories in it. My daughter thought these were really cool because they're kind of like chapter books. They're big and hefty. And, we started All About Reading with her as a review. And so she was a little bit older and she really enjoyed that feeling. You'll need letter tiles and a magnetic whiteboard. I do recommend the magnet part, and then craft materials. What you should know about this program. Okay, so they kind of have a brief, here's what you need to know about how this program works, a very little bit about kind of how we teach children how to read, going into these kind of 5 components: phonological awareness, phonics and decoding, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and talks about how it's mastery based. Honestly, I kind of wish there was more here for you, but I know some folks find that overwhelming. So if you want to know more about kind of like how the brain works and how it is we teach reading, I do have that in my new guide that is about to launch. There's also tons of information online, free resources, podcasts, everything. I have a bunch of free info on my website as well. Is your student right for this level? Okay, so this is like what your child needs to know before they start the level. This is different from some of the other programs out there. Logic of English and Pinwheels both start with kind of your child potentially knowing less information coming in. They are heavy on teaching the letter names and the letter sounds, and they move at a little bit slower of a pace. So if your child does not know all of their letters, can't recite the alphabet song, when I say all their letters, they know they can recognize capital and lowercase letters, you might want to pause and do either pre-reading, All About Reading's pre-reading, or kind of work on mastering the letters before you move in, because this program jumps right in with multiple letters and phonograms being taught per lesson. So it moves at a little bit of a faster pace than some of the other programs available. Is that wrong? Is that right? It doesn't matter. It depends on your child and their needs. Okay. Your child should also display print awareness. So this is kind of concepts about print. They should be able to know how to hold a book. They should understand we read books from front to back. We read left to right. Know that words on the page can be read and they represent spoken words. Your child should also display some listening comprehension and should have some phonological awareness. This program does not include a lot of phonological awareness, if any, really. Phonological awareness is a really key component in early literacy development. If you are noticing that your child struggles with rhyming words, bat, cat, hat, which of these 3 words rhymes with bat and cat? And then you give them several words, only one rhymes. Or what's the beginning sound of cake? Or if I change the k in cake to what word does it make? If your child is struggling with phonological awareness, I want you to kind of pause and consider, their age. If they're on the young side, I would jump into All About Reading's pre-reading program or another early phonological awareness program. I'll link those below. If your child kind of can naturally do that really well, or, within a couple of practice attempts, they can kind of play with words and sounds, then, go ahead. If your student can clap syllables, blend sounds to make words. So blending sounds, like they say here, you say sh, eep, and they put it together to say sheep. So these are all, again, phonological awareness activities. And if your child is struggling with these and they're, 4, jump into pre-reading. If your child is struggling with these and they're 6, 6.5, 7, let's talk because those are kind of early red flag signs, struggling readers. And I say that from my experience teaching in the classroom as well as working as a literacy consultant in the homeschool world. They say in here, your child should display motivation to read. I'm going to throw in another caveat here that some children enjoy being read to, enjoy looking at books, enjoy listening to audiobooks, but do not show any interest in learning how to read. And in my experience, those children, especially if they're older, right? If they're 6.5, 7, older than that, and they don't show any interest in learning how to read, or they actually resist it, those are the children that we really want to get into a systematic reading program right away, because oftentimes those are the children that are going to be struggling with reading and they don't show an interest in it because it's hard. Moving on. Preview the teacher's manual. That's what we're doing now. We talk kind of about how the manual is broken down. We talk about previewing the activity book. We're going to look at that together. They talk about, a read aloud record and the importance of reading aloud, activity sheets, warm-up sheets, practice sheets, and including kind of tips for using these. My foundational reading guide goes into what you can really do with all these extra materials and ways to schedule that into your routine if you're feeling like, how the heck do I schedule that? I will say I really do like the level of materials that All About Reading provides. I like that they have the fluency sheets in here. Some programs don't really include that many fluency sheets, and that leaves you going to have to find your own or make your own. And so I like that they have them. If your child is a beginning learning how to read child and you're finding that this moves too quickly for them or there's not enough materials, then I do think programs like Pinwheels, for example, have a slower, gentler approach and include even more extra materials. Then we have our readers. We have preparing our review box. There is some prep involved in getting ready to teach this program. I recommend, taking a weekend or a couple weekends over the summer to prepare all your materials for the length of the program so that you have them ready to go. They talk about setting up the letter tiles. Again, you can use, the app. I do recommend using physical tiles, especially for the newest learners. They talk about kind of how the letter tiles can be arranged, what the different colors mean for the tiles. We talk about previewing letter sounds. How much time should I spend on reading? So they say, spend 20 minutes per day teaching reading. I think generally speaking, that's appropriate. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit more. Sometimes it might be a little bit less, but especially in this kind of level 1, about 20 minutes is probably the stamina your child's going to have for this. Learning how to read takes a lot of cognitive desk space for a lot of children. They are having to really think hard about this and blending the sounds together and remembering what letters make what sounds and all that. So 20 minutes is usually kind of appropriate. Lessons often take more than one day to complete, okay? Keep this in mind. I typically recommend that people who are starting a reading program with a 5-year-old start with 1 phonogram per week and then speed that up as you know that your child can handle that. All About Reading starts with 4 phonograms a week. So just kind of keep that in mind. They have good reason for that, but it might be too fast for children, especially children who don't know all of their letters names yet. If your child knows all the letter names, then that will probably be a good fit for them. Okay. In addition to lessons, read aloud to your students for 20 minutes a day. So then we jump into our lesson plans. We're going to look at a couple different lessons throughout the book. We're going to start with the beginning of the beginning of the program. We'll look at a lesson in the middle, and we'll look at a lesson at the end. So lesson 1 starts with the letters M, S, P, and A. These are really common letters to begin with. Most foundational reading programs will kind of start with this type of letter sequence. This is often based off of the Orton-Gillingham method. There is a reason to teaching these particular letters to start with, and that is because we can make a lot of words right away using just those 4 letters. So this page here, you'll notice there is kind of a cream tan color. That's for you as a teacher. So we have our objective, we have the materials you'll need, you have before you begin, previewing the sounds of the letters. This is for you to preview, not for your child to preview. This is here's what you need to know as the instructor for this program. So again, previewing the hand motions for the letters, we're previewing vowels and consonants, previewing the blending procedure. Okay, and then it says on the bottom, now you're ready to teach your first lesson. Then the page drops that kind of cream color, and now we have just a white background, and this is your actual lesson. This is what you're teaching. So we have our new teaching. We're teaching the letter sounds. It is scripted. Hold up the phonogram card for the letter M. This letter says Now it's your turn. What does this letter say? Student says Same thing for the rest of these. Okay, then we're talking about saying the different vowels, apple, some activities for how you can, kind of expand on this if your child needs more practice. Playing the SWAT at the phonograms. My children love the SWAT game. It's like a little fly swatter. You can buy like little pretend fly swatters, or you can use a real one, a clean one, and swat the letters, that kind of thing. Then we start working with our letters and moving our tiles around to build words. So it talks about demonstrating how to blend the sounds. We're going to go map. Okay, so it talks about how we do this, how we teach the blending process, changing some of the letters around, doing some word chaining here. The little blue call out boxes are notes to you throughout the lesson, building the word sap. So we're building words. So far we have taught the letters, the sounds they make. We have done some modeling, and now the child is doing some reading. It's following through a little bit of a gradual release process. I do, we do, you do. And so when we're teaching children, we want to move through that structure where me, the teacher, I'm going to do it. I'm going to model it. And then we are going to do it together. And then you are going to do it on your own. And so this program does a pretty good job at moving through that process. So the I do is like, this is what the letter says. Listen to how I read the word. And then we're going to do building some words together. We're going to do some word chaining together. And then your child is going to complete the activity sheet. And that's kind of moving into that you do category. So you have your little activity sheet. Then you have practice reading your words. And then, read a story or a poem and mark the progress chart. Now, that lesson might take you a day. It might take you 2 or 3 days. You might want to work on your activity sheet, a couple times. It depends on the child. As the lessons get more advanced, you might need to slow it down. As your child gets more comfortable with the process, you might need to speed it up. Quickly going to flip through lesson 2 because this starts with 2 lessons before you have a reader, and then we're going to look at the reader. So again, we have kind of your breakdown for you as the teacher. We have our review. Okay, so every lesson we're going to start with a little bit of a review. We have our teaching the new sounds. They have some little call outs for game ideas. You can look in the appendix for more game ideas. I'll show you that at the end. We have commonly confused letters, M and N. We're talking about why they're confused. One of the things I wish this program did more of, and there's more research kind of coming out about this since the program was written, is more talking about where in our mouth we make these sounds. So the difference between an and an n. It does say, if your student has difficulty telling the difference, have him watch your mouth as you say the sounds. This is actually beneficial for all children to be understanding where our tongue is positioned, how the air is flowing when we're making sounds, especially when it comes to voiced and unvoiced sounds where our voice box is turned on or off. This program does not dive deep into that, and that's okay for a lot of students. If you have a student who has speech articulation issues, some kind of speech language, challenge, you might want to consider a program like Pinwheels instead. All right, moving on. We blend the sounds with the letter tiles. We're blending the words. We're playing change the word. We're just doing word chaining here. And then you're going to do your activity sheets. And this one has a couple different activity sheets to do. Then we're going to practice reading the words. We're going to teach a leap word, the or the. Leap words, heart words, irregular sight words, whatever you want to call it. These are words, and in All About Reading, they have a little frog on them, that are not entirely decodable. So that's either because they have a letter that's making an atypical sound, or it's because it's a letter that they have not learned the sound for yet. So the word the, if we say it as the, we have a schwa sound, for the E. If we say it as the, then it's actually not a entirely irregular word. But for this child in this program, regardless of how you pronounce the word, it is a leap word because they have not learned the TH digraph yet. Okay, so they want you to set your child up for success and teach them that. So they have examples here for how to talk through that. If you are interested in more on like kind of how to like deep dive into teaching these irregular sight words, I'll put a link below for that. And then we have our fluency sheet here and reading a story or a poem. A tip or information, some thoughts, I guess, on the fluency sheets. You know, it really depends on your child. This sheet, and I'll show you it in real form in a minute, might be too much for your child to read all in one day. So you could break it up over time. You could also use a piece of paper to block off part of it. Also use these for dictation. So I could call out the words for the child to write. I could call out the phrases or sentences for the child to write as well. And again, I break this all down more on like kind of the rhyme and the reason for this and how to include it in like your daily and weekly schedule in my new foundational reading instruction guide into that lesson. And then we have Read BAM, which is the first reader. So again, we have kind of the objectives for this, how to do it. We have previewing. If you're doing it on a separate day, you're going to kind of review your words and your phonograms. Again, you're going to do a little activity sheet, a little warm-up sheet, and then you're going to read the book. As you get farther into the program, some of the activity sheets come after the reading instead of before the reading. It just depends. So make sure you actually look through the lesson for the book. Let's look at what that looks like in the activity book for a minute. So here is lesson 1. All of these pages are perforated. My recommendation, take some time to prepare all of this for the year, because trust me, when it is like, oh, we are doing reading now and you're not ready, and then your child like seizes the moment and runs off to do something else, you're going to be like, oh shoot, should have done that. You can use binders with page protectors, whatever you want to do. My recommendation is to pull out the pages, cut out the parts that need to be cut out, and either like put them in a baggie, paper clip them, whatever. We'll definitely paper clip them to the part right here where it says the lesson number and have them ready to go. Okay, so for lesson 1, they're reading the word and matching where it goes. Lesson 2, it's a similar thing. We're doing some ice cream cone scooping. There are directions for these activities in the book because the directions aren't, some of them they're obvious, right? We're just matching. Some of them aren't so obvious. This one I think is a rhyming one. So they do have a little bit of phonological awareness there. And then we have our fluency sheet. I do think the fluency sheets are great for review as well. So you can, after you use them, hang on to them and put them in a little notebook thing in your car, or put them in your morning work basket, or put them somewhere where you can kind of pull them out, because rereading this stuff is really important for fluency. It helps us build up our ability to kind of blend the sounds more quickly. We're mapping them to our brain for better recall. Okay, so this is for those first few lessons. This is a little activity for the reader BAM about putting, punctuation at the end of the sentence, and we can try it with, Pam or Pam, the difference in intonation between a period and an exclamation mark. Before you read the reader, you're doing a little bit of warm up, and then this is for the next lesson. Okay, so that is the beginning of this program. So this is in the first one. Here's our little book story BAM. Okay, you'll notice they're very short little sentences. I believe they're underlined because they're entirely decodable. I cannot remember for sure. By the time you get to the third book, they're not underlined, but there are irregular words like said and whatnot in there. So our little story, very short, very brief. And again, they should read this more than one time. I typically recommend to folks read it as part of your reading lesson, then have them read it to somebody else at bedtime or the end of the day. And then the next day when you're getting ready to prepare your reading lesson, as you're getting out your materials, have them read it a third time. Reading these little stories 3 to 5 times each is really going to help build their fluency. Let's look at a lesson towards the middle here. We have our digraph. They call it consonant team, digraph TH. We have our information for you as the instructor. They do have a little bit of the voiced information here. The th is considered an unvoiced sound, while th is considered a voiced sound. We use our vocal cords to say it. You can literally put your hand on your voice box and feel the difference, and I encourage you to have your children feel the difference. Okay, teaching our new letter sound, ideas for extensions, using stamps, blending the sounds with the tiles. You'll notice that with All About Reading, the lessons have a very familiar routine. Okay, we are doing the same steps each time. It's just different material thrown in there. Some children really thrive on that. In fact, many children thrive on that because we don't have to learn a new activity or a new game or whatever. We can just like apply the new concept. Some kids need more different kind of activities mixed in. And so the appendix in the book is great for pulling in more types of games if your child needs that. Then we have our little activity. We have our practice reading words, our fluency sheet, and then there's a reading. As you get into the book, after the first couple of lessons, the pattern is going to be teach new material, and then the next lesson is a reader, and then teach new material, and then the next lesson is a reader. So as you get going, if your child is doing well kind of with the blending and whatnot, you can probably do, 2 to 4 lessons a week. Really depends on your child. Okay. I would say start with kind of 1 phonogram a week. So when I say 1 phonogram, I mean TH, the phonogram. Okay. So you would be stretching out lesson 18 and 19 because they're focused on that new phonogram TH throughout the week. If you're unsure how to do that, you can break the lesson into different components. You can pull out different activities to throw in throughout the week. You can reread your fluency sheet more than one time. You can do the activities more than one time. You can pull in additional decodable resources. I like Explode the Code is a great option for that. The Literacy Nest has more decodable resources. So you can extend it. If your child is struggling, if you don't know how to give them more of what they need, okay, check out my guide, okay? Then we have our little book. Get ready. There's 2 stories in this one, Get Them and the Red Pen. So again, easier to spread this out over a week when you have multiple resources like this they have right now. The different little readers, we have activities, we have the warm-up sheet. We'll come to our activity book. I have a brand new activity book here because I will be using this with my son in the, late summer, fall. We're finishing up All About Reading's pre-reading program right now, and then we'll jump into All About Reading 1. So again, I would have pre-cut these out. There's a little activity about, flipping over the eggs and reading them. Then we have our new words and phrases. We have our little activity in sentences at this point as well. And then we have an activity and warm-up sheet for the books. One thing I really like about All About Reading is their fluency building with their sentences. This is a really great strategy to use. We read each one to build up. So Peg got them a map. Okay, love that. This is really helpful for a lot of children, especially children who are struggling readers. Our little activities here, you will see that they have these little word flippers. Again, prepare these in advance because this involves like the paper cutter and staplers, and you will forget and then you'll be rushed. These are really great for building fluency. This little C part comes here along with these other letters, and so you read cash and then you flip it over and it's dash, mash, rash, and so forth. So those are great. Let's look at the story for those so you can kind of see the progress that we're making. The red pen. This is Tex. Tex is a thin red pen. Tex is a big, big hen. So kind of little imagination here. We're getting full sentences now. We're, kind of expanding our stamina with reading, several pages. Let's look at one more lesson towards the end, and then we'll look at the appendices. This is the last lesson in the book is on open and closed syllables. So if we look back to the scope and sequence, this program is going to go through all of the consonants and vowels. We're going to do the main digraphs, TH, SH, CH. We're going to do the floss rule, so FFLLSS. We're going to do additional digraphs, CK, NG, NK. The NG and the NK are oftentimes part of a first grade program. So this, program is kind of bridging kindergarten, first grade-ish. We're going to talk about some additional sounds for the vowels and for CH. And then we're going to start with open and closed syllables. This program, in my opinion, is primarily a kindergarten program because we do not include heavy instruction in long vowels. The NK and the NG are really kind of previewing first grade materials. So if you're trying to figure out, what age, 5.5 is when I typically recommend starting a reading program. If you're homeschooling, kindergarten age, I really don't recommend teaching reading before 5, just based off of my experience and research. All right, anyways, open and closed syllables. So we're starting to talk about how we read words based on the rules for syllables. So like shed is closed, which makes, there's a consonant on the end and it makes the E say its soft sound, but she is open. And so we read she the E as its long sound because it's an open syllable. So really kind of starting to introduce these long vowel ideas and the rules for that. So teaching our long vowel sounds, teaching closed and open syllables, kind of talking about how to do this, how you're going to teach it, additional words for practice, practice reading words. We have our activity sheet and our fluency practice. And then we have a couple stories to read to consolidate those skills. Okay? So if we look in the blast off to reading here, we have, again, those little activities. Have our fluency sheet. They are double-sided at this point. We have words in previous lessons. Okay. And then there's a little, certificate at the end of the book. Last reader, okay, to see kind of the end of where they're going to be reading wise. We're reading little, sentences on pages here. Like this is a substantial amount of progress from the beginning of the book when we were reading 1 or 2 word sentences. We have dialogue happening. We have words up here and words down here. So the stories are getting longer. There's more text on the page. They're not necessarily entirely decodable, again, because we have words like said, where we have to just know that the AI says the eh sound. Okay. So that is kind of a in-depth look inside what the teaching is. Let's look at the appendices here. So we have the scope and sequence kind of laid out again for us here. We have all the phonograms taught in all the levels. So level 1, and if you're wanting to know what's coming up in 2, 3, and 4. So this is the entire scope and sequence. This is where you can see, like, this program is going to follow me all throughout the reading needs. It's explicitly taught. It is laid out in a way that is systematic. It makes sense based off of the research. Okay, we talk about the blending procedure, again, how to blend the words, how to teach that. We talk about some problems about letter reversals, which are pretty common, especially in level 1. And, if your child is older and still doing some letter reversals, you might want to look at some more in-depth practice for that. They have some different little analogies here. My son is learning his lowercase letters right now, and he loves baseball. So the bat and then the ball is really helpful for him. Talks about using your hands. So again, different approaches. We have our visual, we have our kinesthetic. They talk about how to put together those little word flippers for you. I do think reading through your appendix before you start teaching is great, so you know what is here for you. We have different games and activities that you can pull in. You'll see those little symbols throughout the program as kind of an idea if you need to know what to do to extend it, but you can pull these into any of the lessons. Talk about snacks and rewards, positive words, some little activity sheets for feed the monster, swat the words, fun with emotions, activities for review, art and creative play, how to use the word cards for review, comprehension activities. If your student struggles with the stories, methods for counting syllables, okay, how to set up your magnet board, leap words or heart words or irregular sight words taught, and why, okay, why taught as a leap word, okay. So this is helpful to know why. English is a pickle of a language, but we can explain why for a lot of these, and that helps a lot of children. It also is helpful if we're teaching them, for example, the word said. It's like we can sound out this and the d, it's the in the middle. That is tricky. One of the things I wish this program did more of was phoneme grapheme mapping. They do a little bit of that with the word tiles, but they really don't dive into it enough in my opinion, and that is something that I would include in. I have more about that on my website. Okay, so that is all about reading 1. I want to show you really quick how I am using the letter tiles. So I have this giant foldable whiteboard, and I have way more tiles. Oh boy, I have way more tiles on here than you would have for All About 1 because we are on reading 3 with my daughter. I will be setting up a separate board for my son because having too many, like having all these, ooh, Nelly, would be really overwhelming for him. But this has worked great for us because I can fold this up and get it out of the way and then pull it out when we need it. So I hope you found this helpful. This is a solid program. It has been around for a long time. It is research-based. It's Orton Gillingham based. It works for a lot of families. You will likely need to make some accommodations for your child to speed it up or slow it down. And, if you're looking for more on how to do that, definitely check out my info and my highlights over on Instagram. Check out my blog, check out my guide on reading instruction and all that jazz. So if you found this helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe. If you're like, that looks good, but I'm not sure it's for me, check out the other resources I have linked below. I have videos on all my other recommended programs as well. So thanks for sticking in here, and I'll see you next time.